Hello, welcome to Peabody TV's 15 Minutes of Fame. I'm Jacky Ankeles. The program features people on the North Shore with an interesting hobby or skill or who've accomplished something unusual. It's fun for us to be able to share local people's stories with you and to recognize some of the special things that they do. Today we're going to meet Calvin Anderson. He's a lifelong Peabody resident, now retired from GE, and he's a nature lover, especially the nature right in his own backyard. He's a man of many talents. He's a woodworker, a photographer, to name just a couple, and he's combined those talents with his interest in birds, ducks in particular. So we're going to head over to Cedar Pond and check out just a fraction of what Cal has been working on. We'll get a close look at the duck houses that he's built and see if he'll show us some of his rare photos of ducks in action. So let's go.
How you doing?
Good to see you.
Yeah.
Thank you for having us over.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Appreciate
Anytime.
it. So now you actually grew up in this house where you are right now.
Since I was 7, 1956.
Okay. Could you just orient us a little bit?
This is Upper Linfield Street, Bicentennial Park, which used to be all farms years ago, okay? Eastman Gelatin owned this property. This water is pumped down to the plant to process the gelatin. And they have well lines out here and pumping stations. My father was in maintenance.
At Eastman?
Yeah. And they would call him anytime. It could be 2 in the morning. He'd have to get up and go to the pump, part of his job, and send the water down to the plant. They'd call for 1 million gallons or something. When they got that quota, they would call the pump house and tell them, all right, Bob,
shut it off.
So he'd shut it down. They stored it in big wooden tanks down there years ago. You know, I'm going back almost 60 years now. Everything was a lot different back then.
Well, Cal, I know you love the wildlife out here with the pond. How have you turned all of this with the pond into a hobby?
My father working for Eastman, we would all get cameras for Christmas, birthdays, and you know, there was always wildlife. Well, I would see deer and fox, all kinds of, you know, ducks and everything. And I just used my camera and started taking pictures, and I've been doing it for years.
You must want to have your camera with you all the time, just in case.
Yeah, well, you know,
shots.
Most times the best shots, I don't have the camera, you know.
It's always that way.
Now with the cell phones and all that, you always have a camera with you. But, you know, I prefer to use, you know, a manual, you know, that I've used for years. Like I say, there's everything you can think of right here. Frogs, snakes, turtles.
But you love the ducks.
Well,
especially.
Years ago, the wood ducks, they're very, very rare. And to see them was just something. You know, like other ducks, they need water. Unlike the other ducks, they need the woods. That's where the name wood duck comes from, because they rely on the trees to make their nest, to lay their eggs. And it's not out on a branch in an open nest like most birds. It's in a tree cavity, which are hard to find. They're in dead trees, you know. They don't peck a hole like a woodpecker. They just take over, maybe a squirrel hole. And then there's a lot of competition with raccoons and woodpeckers and other things that want to nest in that hole.
You have to remind yourself that you're still in Peabody. I mean, you literally live on a main street.
Well, you should have been here 60 years ago if you think this is. The wood ducks, I see them in the trees here, the oak trees in the fall. They eating the acorns, getting fueled up for their trip back. Wherever they go, I think down the Carolinas, like I said, I don't think they go too far from here. But they do spend time in the woods, on the ground as well, picking up the acorns, you know. The young ones, when they're young, they don't eat the acorns right now. You know, they're eating the bugs and the water plants and stuff until they get bigger, and then they're on their own once they can fly, you know. She's probably had it with 15 kids by that time.
So you kind of help nature along by building duck houses.
Yeah, and that all started in 1966. I was 17 years old, My older sister Gail went to the Essex Aggie. While she was there, she met this fella, Kenny. He was a nice guy, and he was studying to be an arborist. He wanted he took the horticulture course, and part of that course, they had to make a wood duck box. When Kenny saw this property, he thought, wow, what a perfect spot for a wood duck box. So he asked my father for permission. And my father said, sure, go right ahead. That was it. That's when it all started, 1966. It took a couple seasons before it drew anything in. One day I'm down back and there's a beautiful pair of wood ducks. Ever since then, I've been doing it, putting a couple more out each year. I got up to about a dozen, then I had to cut back because there was too many, believe it or not.
Tell me about the houses that you build. How did you know what to build so that they would actually use them?
The Division of Fish and Wildlife, and them folks, they're great. They bend over backwards to help you answer any questions you have, and they sent me plans. I modified it a little. Their box, for their specifications, the roof has to come off, and they're harder to clean out. So these, I just take and I hinge the front. I put a couple of stainless steel nails, bend them, and it just hinges. And in there is just a mixture of oak and pine leaves. Gather these in the fall, while they can get them, because they don't carry anything in or out of their nest site, the wood ducks. When they start laying their eggs, they pull out all the down off their belly. It's fluffy down, and that they cover the eggs over with that when they leave to eat, to keep them warm and hide them. Other things, owls get into these boxes,
I was going to ask how you keep other animals out.
You can't, That's why they have a predator guard. If you put this house on land, you should use a predator guard, which this box has. Okay, that's what they call it. And it keeps raccoons and things out. That's if they're on land, but squirrels and owls can still get in these.
Yeah.
But you really cut down on the predators when you put it out over the water, because the raccoons aren't going to get in at their eggs or anything, you know what I mean? Because they're over the water. But you can't keep the owls out, which they're good to keep around anyway.
And the opening is so tiny.
Well, they're small ducks, and it actually, I could put this 100 feet up a tree and it wouldn't deter them. The young ones have to jump out when they're hatched. They take about 30 days. She'll spend a day in there with them, and then she'll stick her head out and look around, and she's looking for predators. When the coast is clear, she'll fly to the ground. Then she'll look back up and call them out. They jump, and they have large webbed feet, and they actually use them as parachutes, like kind of to break their fall, to slow down their speed.
But the babies take off?
They run over to the mother till every last one's there, and then she takes them into the water. But I heard somewhere one of them jumped 300 feet.
Oh.
That's a football field.
You need a parachute for that?
Yeah, I guess so, a couple of them.
So some of the houses I noticed were up on the trees, and some are right in the water.
Well, they prefer over the water for safety, and if I was a young one going to jump out, I'd rather land in the water than on my head in the middle of the woods. Yeah, but it cuts back on the predators. You're not going to get a fox in there, or a raccoon, or anything that's eating the eggs, other than the owls, which have wings. And hey, I like to keep them around. They eat a lot of mice. But yeah, I just place them out in a semicircle, that way they're facing all different directions.
I see. What is this?
Well,
there has to be a good story with this.
That's nothing that the state planned. Actually, it's an old ash can, ashtray, and I worked in GE for years, as I said, and I was on the health and safety committee for a few years, and part of my job was to get rid of the ashtrays when they banned smoking. No. So I took this one home, and I thought it was kind of unique with the stone face, and I thought I'd turn it into a box for Woody. And she loves it. And I guess she prefer a non-smoking environment for her young ones, I guess, because every year she comes to this box.
Can you show us some of these?
That's a male. Yeah, they have red eyes. They're fast flyers. They have short wings and short tails, and that enables them to make really erratic turns quick. Mm-hmm. And you got to figure if they're going through the woods 20, 30 miles an hour, they got to be able to dodge trees and branches. Good shot of a female with some of her young.
Babies.
She had about a dozen, but
Is that typical?
Oh yeah, they could have up to 15, 16 eggs, depending on the size of the cavity. That's why in the wild, if the tree can only house just her body, she's not going to lay many eggs, you know? She's not going to lay 20 if you can't sit on them.
Okay.
So this here increases production.
Can you kind of run us through the seasons, when they nest, when they mate?
Yeah, you know, they're here early in the spring, like right now, March, and that varies, you know. And they look for their houses. Usually the dominant duck takes the best box. It's normally one they used the year prior, you know, and the young one's got to fend for themselves, you know. It's the pecking order.
Yeah,
But
there's the male watching.
oh, he stands by. And then he leaves. So they take a new mate every spring. They don't mate for life.
What is that?
That's a wood duck hen. She's on top of the box.
Yeah.
She's on top of it. She's waiting to go in there and lay her eggs, you know.
Oh, look.
That's her in the box.
There she is.
She's just looking out.
Just
She's
peeking
not
out.
bothered by me. She's used to seeing me, you know. If she doesn't like looking at me, she's not going to have a place to stay.
Oh, such incredible pictures. Look at this.
Yeah, that's her just looking out the hole. See that? They're very cautious before they jump out. They look around, make sure there's not a alligator snapper below. That's their biggest enemy.
Wow.
At the top of this pole is a hole. The owl lived in that hole. It's a perfect size for the owl. Squirrels have been in and out of it, but they don't stay. But the owl seems to like it and stay there. Again, they're limited because they need a cavity. Everything's fighting for a place to lay their eggs, you know? Everything that nests in the tree cavities is, they home in on these holes. They spot them a mile away, especially the wood ducks. But again, they need the right size to house their body and house it 15 eggs, 10 eggs, whatever they're gonna lay, you know?
You help with the housing shortage?
Yeah, I guess so. I don't get much rent money, but you know, they appreciate it, and I enjoy doing it, that's all. It's just something I just do without even thinking about, you know?
That's going to do it for this edition of Peabody TV's 15 Minutes of Fame. We've been visiting with Calvin Anderson and checking out his duck houses and looking at some of his stunning nature photos. Calvin, I'll tell you, your knowledge and your appreciation of what you've got here is just amazing. Thanks for having us over.
I'm lucky. Well, you're welcome. You're welcome anytime.
Thank you.
Anytime.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
I'm Jacky Ankeles, and join us next time to find out who will get to enjoy 15 Minutes of Fame. Could be one of your neighbors. Bet you'll be surprised.
And if you know someone on the North Shore who has an interesting hobby, skill, or accomplishment, we'd love to hear from you. Just go to peabodytv.org/15minutes.